Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 91. Today we have a really awesome guest. Today we have Swami from Swami Select with us. Thank you so much for joining us, Swami.
Thanks for having me on. It's a lot of fun.
We also have Mr. Green Jeans.
All right.
There
Hi,
we go.
everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks, everybody.
We got Marty,
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
and we got Josh from Dutch Blooms.
Hey guys, stoked to have Swami on. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So, Swami, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your farm? I understand you're DEM Pure certified, and you guys do all different kinds of really awesome, sustainable growing methods. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I've had a chance to talk to you at a couple of different events and hear you speak at a bunch of different places. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, we grow up here in Laytonville, and we've been growing up here for about 14 years, and really, over time, starting to dial it in. I'm also Clean Green certified since 2011, and then with Josh and Kelly for about 3-4 years now. We've had the DEM Pure. The thing I like about the DEM Pure certification is that they look at the whole process, the whole landscape, and where we're situated and so on. And if you really want the real details about DEM Pure, of course, you really want to talk with Josh and Kelly. But what I like about the concept is the idea of closed loop systems, and also combined with what Jeff Lowenfels talks about, which is the law of return. That you have to put back in as much as you can, and like the forest, it's feeding itself. So I have to say, I'm a long ways from that yet, but what we're trying to do is, create the kind of forest duff conditions in the garden that the forest has. So this year we're kind of redoing our soil again to try and incorporate more elements from our ranch itself. So we've had people raking up leaves, and we've been collecting all the branches, the dead branches that fall mostly from oak and madrone, and wood chipping that, and collecting the ashes and charcoal out of the wood stove, and mixing that all together. And I really thought, long and hard about manure. We don't really have animals here yet, but I have some really close friends down in Laytonville, about 20 miles away, and they have horses and mules and goats and ducks and various other kinds of things. So they've got this, big, beautiful pile of manure sitting down there. So we brought up a load of it up here, a couple of loads, and we're mixing that all together. And we also have the soil that we use is all basically native soil. What we're doing is just amending to it. And previously, before we bought this land, had been logged. And the logger, he didn't cut a lot of stuff down, but when he did, he cleaned up and pushed a whole bunch of forest stuff into a big pile. So I took that pile apart, and there was charred logs in it and so on. But that pile then became the basis of all of our new garden plots. So it's basically really soil from here that has been moved around and so on. So and the closed loop system is idea that you have stuff that regenerates within your farm. We also do the IMOs, the indigenous microorganisms, boiling up the rice and burying it around, and then using that in the compost teas. And we also on part of our garden this year, we got a chance to do the total cover cropping, of the green manure, of the vetch and the pea and the fava beans and stuff like that, the nitrogen fixing thing. So the idea is to, try and source as much as we can just totally locally, and then also anything else that's, mostly from our farm. And then, of course, we have to add other stuff too, like we probably need a little bit of, glacial, what is it, rock phosphate or something like that, because phosphorus is the hardest one to get. So anyway, we've, shied away pretty much from well, certainly we don't need any fish, feather meal or fish bone or blood meal or that sort of stuff. I used it way in the past, and I just sort of felt that I wanted to move away from that. And and that's the kind of idea, to have plants feed the plants. I use the manure because I feel that all the animals are herbivores, right? And you don't have to make them shit; they shit quite happily. So we use that stuff. But there's a deeper philosophy to our garden, which has to do with the spiritual side, the inspirational side of cannabis, and that's the idea that cannabis is this sacred herb, and so as a result, we have a goddess called Ganja Ma. Ganja is Sanskrit for cannabis, and so in the springtime, I put my seeds at her feet and give her get a blessing from her, and then when we plant them, when I crack the seeds, I put like a drop of water from the Ganges River on each little bunch of seeds, and we say a mantra. And then likewise, when they're transplanted, we also, the seeds, they go in, we give them all a drop of Ganges water. So the idea is that this is an inspirational way of healing. It's a way of being, setting the intention for the cannabis right in the beginning. And along with that, we have our garden layout, which is in the shape of a sacred geometry. It's I just put up a story on Mary Jane magazine that describes our whole garden and the Sri Yantra and how it's arranged. And the Sri Yantra is a sacred diagram of interlocking triangles and circles and lotus petals. And it's a diagram of the spinning of the cosmic energy, and on the ground it's oriented north, south, east, west. So the garden is oriented to the rotation of the earth and the movement of the sun and the stars. And so it's part of the I don't know what you call the geomantic nature of. So it's like taking the earth part of Dem Pure and the recycling and the regenerative in the ground, and relating that geographically and geologically and geomantically to the rotation of the earth and the orientation of that. So my feeling dimension to the cannabis, to know that that's the intention. So yeah, that's part of the whole the layout in the earth and the blessing with the goddess, and then also to be moving more and more towards sourcing everything locally. And anyway, anybody have anything you want else to talk about, because that in relation to that, be any questions that people might have and so on. I'll just leave open for the moment for the second.
Sure. How did you is that the way you've been growing from the beginning, or is that something that you've kind of come to where your current thoughts over a kind of a journey or a period of time?
Well, that's exactly right. It's definitely a journey. I like to say I'm a quadruple Gemini, so I'm actually doing something different every year. I really never do everything the same every year at all. Partly because I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to listen to what other people have said and what other people have discovered. I mean, I've read that, Jeff Lowenfeld's great books, and I've read some of the things that Elaine Ingham has talked about, and trying to then, understand. It's just been a thrill to me to really learn how the earth, the soil, really works, and how it is this soil food web, as what Jeff calls it, and it's living soil. And the idea is to try and put the ingredients in there that are going to make the nematodes happy, and get the worm castings and the manure and all these things, and they start to work together as a whole. Well, see, in cannabis, we talk about the ensemble of all the different 400 different compounds in it. And we can do the same thing with the earth, too, that the earth is like an ensemble of all the different ingredients that are working together, whether the bacteria or the fungi, the archons, the arthropods, all those different things that are in there, the parameciums and so on. And they are, making a concert in a certain way. And it's the way that the plants then interrelate. So, I'm still working toward the highest level of fertility and yield and so on, but I seem to get really potent plants. And the thing that I find most about the plants really ultimately is that I really try and listen to them, right? Now, we have our endocannabinoids, and so we have kind of a molecular connection. We have an ethnobotanical connection with this plant for at least 10,000 years. And, we all have our intimate connection within our own lifetimes. And the more we can listen to the plant on how it wants to be treated. And I particularly do that at harvest time, right? When I go to harvest, the thing that I like to do is I like to ask the plant if it's ready to come in. And I do a sort of muscle testing sort of thing where, I don't know if you can see here, I hold my hand with my finger. Where is it? And if I have a strong response, it says yes. If I have a weak response, it says no. So I actually go up to every plant at harvest time and I ask it, do you want to come in tomorrow? And then I say, are you ready to come in tomorrow? And then I say, should I leave you for another couple of days? And if it answers yes to the first two questions and no to the last question, then I'll take it to the next morning. If it says, no to the first two and yes to the one that I should leave it, then I leave it. But the other thing for me is that I then harvest in the dark. I get up at like 5:30 in the morning in October, and I cut the plants, and my harvesting and the plants are hung just as the first light as sunrise starts to come up. And I found that that's one of the ways in which you get the maximum terpene saturation and also probably the highest. And so that's been one of the key things but that's also part of the rhythm, as the geomantic rhythm of the Earth's rotation is to, as you get it, as it's circling and the sun is rising. So all that stuff is rising into the flowers at that point, and you get it at its maximum. And so it's part of a totality of consciousness that, yes, it starts with the soil. The soil grows the plants. And my job is to grow the soil and make the soil as vibrant as possible. And we're still working on that. And so, at any rate, that's kind of the philosophy of it, that is based in, first of all, being organic. I mean, I often said that I grew my first plants in 1978, right? And I grew them right in downtown San Francisco by Coit Tower, and I used Miracle Grow. Right, so it was a great experiment. Then over time, I've changed. Like I say, I've used blood meal and fish meal and so on, and now I've moved away from all of that. And for a while, I grew in raised beds that were wooden sided, and then I grew in smart pots for a while. And then it was just 3 years ago now that I decided actually to put plants in the ground. And so it's been a little process of dialing that in. A lot of people said, don't do it, because, I had a kind of situation dialed in. So it's been a while readjusting. And my soil is very full of clay. And so I've had to add a lot of stuff, organic material. And, I'm probably going to add some lava rock that comes from about 30 miles away, too. And but it's just always an exciting thing and the more I learn about how the plant cells work and how the living soil web works, it's just fascinating and it's thrilling. And it's kind of like, I don't know, when you learn something, it keeps you young. You got to stretch your brain and you got to get rid of old concepts and prejudices and so on, and listen to other people who actually know a lot more than I do about this stuff. So just trying to put it into practice.
I was going to ask about the water from the Ganges or Ganges River. Is that I'm ignorant on it, but I kind of have some sort of thing in the back of my head. It's like I think I heard something more about that in the past, and also just was that something you went and collected? If you just wanted to talk more about that.
Sure, that's fun. In India, the sacred river, there are many sacred rivers in India that are all revered, but the most sacred of all is the Ganges River. And its source is way up in the Himalayas. And one of the things, and when I was living in India for many, many years, I would make a pilgrimage up to the source of the Ganges. I went up there two different times. And there's this amazing waterfall. And I didn't quite make it to the source, which it comes out of a glacier called the Cow's Mouth, a little further up, maybe 2 miles further up the thing. But it's just an amazing place that you're way in these mountains, and you're like at 12,000 feet, and the mountains around you are at 18 and 20, 23,000 feet, and you just jump in the Ganges River, and it's like freezing cold. But all of a sudden, as soon as you get out, you're like embraced by the warmth of Mother, by the elements of earth, air, fire, water, and somehow you're just not cold. It's truly kind of astounding. And so this river is, there's a great mythology about it, and it's kind of one of the central mythologies of all of the Hindu religion in India. The Ganges River comes out of 4 main branches up in the Himalayas, and they join together to create the Ganges River. And it flows then from north west of Delhi all the way out to by Calcutta into the Bay of Bengal. And it's apparently there's a story that the water was coming from heaven and it was crashing down to the earth, and it was just destroying everything. And so the great Lord Shiva, god of yoga and god of meditation, who was living in the Himalaya, he then said, okay, I'll break the fall of this river by letting it hit on my head and cascade through my dreadlocks. And so that the dreadlocks sort of became like the tributaries, but they all collect together and become the Ganges. And they have sacred celebrations at the Ganges. And it was in 1998 in a place called Haridwar, where the Ganges first comes out of the Himalayan mountains, where I took initiation and became Swami Chaitanya Nanda. And so that was an amazing moment for me when the molecules of the Ganges River kind of transformed my own molecules. And so the river is said to not actually be water. It's said to really be the elixir of immortality. So it's beyond water. And even though you might see that the Ganges River might at some point look like it's totally polluted, it looks like cafe au lait, in fact. If you go 10 miles downstream, it somehow repurifies itself. And so the idea that it is the elixir of immortality has this amazing vitality in it. And I can tell you the story. The myth is really quite amusing if you want to hear it, which is that the gods and the demons were churning the Milky Ocean because they wanted to create the elixir of immortality. And if you can imagine, all the demons are on one side, and all the gods and goddesses, mostly the gods, are on one side, and there's holding a rope, but the rope is made out of a giant snake. And around they have a spindle, which was a mountain, and they're trying to like churn butter, right? But they're churning the Milky Ocean. And as they do this, the spindle spins, and so they have to, the Vishnu just becomes a turtle, and they put it on his back. He's spinning this spindle on his back. So out of this main mythic challenge of the gods and the demons working together, they spin this, and first of all, out comes the wish-fulfilling cow, Kamadeno. Any wish you make, the cow will fulfill it. Then comes the gem-bearing tree. So all the wealth of the world comes off this tree. And then comes the man who creates Indian medicine. And he is the guy who writes all the doctrine of the whole story of Indian medicine. And then just before the last thing that comes out, which is the jug, which will contain the elixir of immortality, there's another thing that comes out, and those are the seeds for a male and female cannabis plant. And as they come out, they are in the jug, and then they fill this jug full of the elixir of immortality. And at this point, the gods and the demons start to fight over it. So one of the gods turns into the most beautiful woman in the world, and all the demons chase this beautiful woman. Everybody's writing me too. And then all of a sudden, the gods fly off into the air, but as they fly away in this jug carrying the elixir of immortality, a couple of things fall out. 4 drops of water fall out, and they create these Kumbh Mela festivals. But along with the water, 2 marijuana seeds, cannabis seeds, fall out into the north side of the Himalayas. And they then are the source of all the cannabis that comes into the world from this one male and female seed that fall. And so the story of cannabis is intimately wrapped up in Hindu mythology and kind of like the creation epic of the whole Hindu subcontinent. And when you go to the Ganges River and you take some of this water, you're actually sourcing something that has an infinitely past beginning and an infinitely glorious future. And so we take a little molecule out of it and put it onto our cannabis plants. And of course, I've been to these places when there's like 1 million people, and you go to the where the Ganges comes together with the Yamuna River, and you get Ganges water, but you can line these days, right? There's so much stuff online that you can get sacred Ganges water delivered to your front door by FedEx by ordering it online. So anyone can actually use it, but it's also important to say the prayer, say the mantra when you do it, which energizes the water as well. So anyway, that's kind of a long roundabout story, but I hope it was entertaining.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. That was cool. It's very similar to like, I grew up in Northern California in a Native American community, not far from where you are, farther north, actually closer to Oregon. And, a lot of the mythology around, their stories are similar to that and based around the river and less about gods and more about animal beings. I guess the spiritual personification of the coyote as opposed to a god that is coyote-like is probably the only significant difference, I would say, in the way that they use their creation stories. Or like there's one of the ones I remember from a kid all the time they used to tell a lot was about how the coyote gave them fire, and the whole morality or the whole story around the moral of the story is that the coyote in nature is very crafty, and it survives by being cunning and smart and intelligent, as opposed to like a wolf or a bear. And they all have their similar sort of stories, so it felt a lot like that. So I really enjoyed the story. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, here in Laytonville, we used to have Earth Dance here, and we had a gathering of elders, and it's one of the local elder Native people was a great man named Coyote from over in Covelo, Round Valley Reservation. So I got to know Coyote a bunch. He always said, "I'm Coyote. I'm going to try and trick you," right? Mm-hmm. That was the thing, right? Play a little mental game with you and to get you think one thing and think. But that's also a key characteristic of human beings too. That everyone has kind of a little story. And but Indian gods also, there's the elephant-headed god Ganesha, right? And there's the monkey god Hanuman, and there's also there's 7 mothers that have different animal heads and so on. So the Hindu tradition likewise has animal forms personified into gods, and that Ganesha's stories, he's got an elephant head but a human body and so on. So he kind of like is a place where animal and man kind of conjoin. And Hanuman too is someone who's so close to human that when his heart opens and he gives his devotion to Rama, then he gets closer into a human incarnation, because he has that altruism. So India has those animal legends as well, and in fact Shiva, the god who is the one involved in this first legend, also he is called the father of the animals, Pasupatina. He's the father of all the animals.
Very cool. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else want to talk about? The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is what we're doing up here in Mendo and in Humboldt too, and actually can happen anywhere. And that is we have a thing here called Mendocino Appellations Project. And we're trying to work into a categorization like they have for wine, where there are certain districts that are known for very particular strains of cannabis, and that you can kind of tell that Maui Wowie has a certain sort of thing, or the other strains that are coming out of Hawaii, and so on. And so now that these days we don't really have probably too many land races that are pure land races much anymore. So what happens is that different districts, say Mendocino County alone, we have about 13 different areas that are cannabis growing areas that are really quite distinct from one another. There's the people on the coast, people high in the mountains that are further inland, almost to Lake County where it's very dry, people growing in the valleys, and so on. So we're trying to make sort of geographic designations that would indicate that not only this isn't just Mendocino cannabis, this isn't just Humboldt cannabis, but it's actually from, Salmon Creek or wherever it would be, Bell Springs or Philo and so on in Mendocino County. And that then becomes something that raises our consciousness about what's actually best growing in a particular area. And as you document the whole idea of this is an appellation, the key concept is what they call terroir, which is from a French word, terroir meaning of the soil or from the soil. And so what is the distinct quality of something that's grown up on Bell Springs Road as distinct from something that's grown way down in Boonville or something like that? And can we actually really tell the differences, But this is an idea to say that there's a certain cultural lore that the people who live on Bell Springs Road have developed by interchange, by seed stuff and so on. And the people of Boonville have a whole other different kind of lore and a different way of growing and so on. So anyway, it's an interesting idea. Go ahead.
People forget how big of an area that is. When they talk about Northern California, there's so much between, Mendocino and Siskiyou or Del Norte County, and that's even still just half of Northern Cali. The other half is all high desert, and so definitely, the different distinctions. My mom's side of my family's been from Garberville, for generations, Garberville, Redway, and how even just the differences between there and say Eureka in climate are pretty drastic, even though they're only about 60 minutes apart. So it's definitely, so many microclimates exist in Humboldt and Mendo both, that I could see there being a need for that kind of distinction.
Yeah, I think so. And actually, I was just reading the new ordinance they passed up in Humboldt, and they put a cap on the number of grows at 3,500 grows. But it's interesting what they've done is they've taken all the watersheds of Humboldt County and they've laid them out, and they said, this watershed we're going to allow 500 grows. In this watershed we're going to allow 700. In this watershed we're only going to allow 100. I think that's a kind of a very interesting way to do it. I'll have to give it some thought to see if I fully agree with that, but it's probably not a bad idea. Of course, a lot of people don't want a cap on the number of grows, but 3,500 grows for Humboldt. I think only about 1,000 people have actually applied so far up in Humboldt. So, but anyway, to get to your point, we do have so much variety. I think if you put Humboldt and Mendo together, it's bigger than Connecticut, right?
Yeah.
And so, and so we take all of New England to put it together, Maine, New Hampshire, and so on. That's probably what we got, Del Norte and Siskiyou and all of that put together, So yeah, it is a huge area, and the climate variation is quite just striking because we have, the high desert in the eastern part is almost like a rain shadow thing, and they have so much different soil and different, vegetation and different animals living there too. So that's part of the whole thing. See, like where we are at our ranch, I look out in my meadow, I see deer, I see turkeys. I know we've got bobcats and gray foxes and mountain lions and bears and rattlesnakes and king snakes and all these things, and they're just living with us, And so it's just a whole kind of thing that we're at the edge of a Doug fir forest, and we've got 8 kinds of oak trees growing here and so on. So it's a whole kind of climate, and that's part of the whole idea of that we, by sourcing those different elements into our garden and so on, that the garden really starts to express the actual, as you mentioned before, the microbiome, the whole individual mini climate that we have here, which is another thing that would make each cannabis special that someone grows.
So for a lot of people that haven't aren't quite as familiar with the whole kind of concept, can you maybe just explain a little bit about that as far as how you're growing your own plants to use for your compost teas and ferments, and you want to touch about on that maybe just lightly?
Yeah. Well, we do grow some of our plants, and last year we had a grower here who was actually going and doing fermented teas, going out every morning and pinching off the flowers and so on. And we've also used some of Dem Pure's pre-made compost tea mixes, and then gathering various stuff from here that we use, flowers, and we're still starting to grow some of the the cover crop, the alfalfa and oats and so on. We haven't really gotten that full scale yet, but yeah, we get straw too from our neighbor. But the compost teas, they're a whole process. We have a big brewer and so on. That's been a whole kind of thing, and the plant material that goes in is all the various things. We used to grind up oat. We have a mill. We grind up oats and put those in. But we're still not that far along in terms of growing everything on our own land to put into the soil. So we're still, in the process, because we've only been trying to do the Dem Pure for about 4 years now. It takes a while to get it up to speed.
Very cool.
So anyway, so it is a long process to dial in. If you're used to in the past, if you were taking gallon jugs off the shelf and pouring it on your prop, or just spreading in various things as top dressing, so on, it takes a while to make that transition to where it's really the soil with the compost teas that makes it really happen. And so that's the brew cycle too is because we're off the grid, right? So to have a 24-hour brew is difficult. And so we've been trying to do a 12-hour brew so I can use my solar power system rather than have to use a generator to run all night. So that's one of the kind of limitations we have. So we've also been using pond water, which is really nice, because pond water, which we have the fishes and the various other things. So pond water itself is really very nutritious. And so that really helps the plants. Yeah. It's just about trying to put as much. Go ahead.
We had a lot of luck in Jamaica doing that, where we were just running at 15 minutes every 45 minutes on a timer for the off-grid stuff. This way, it keeps it just enough to where it keeps from settling and going, anaerobic. But you get a lot more power out of your battery.
Oh, I have to think about that. Yeah, because we keep upping our number of solar panels and trying to keep it going. And yeah, so it's just very interesting to be off the grid totally. And see, the only reason I'm talking to you is we have a satellite dish, and because of the wonders of the modern computer thing. But otherwise, we're totally off the grid. It's kind of nice.
That's awesome.
Working quite well for satellite. I'm impressed.
Me too.
Yeah.
Will you still be able to talk when the sun goes down?
Oh yeah,
Swami.
My batteries are charged up. Yeah, the batteries charge up all day. And at this time of year, in the wintertime, I sometimes need the backup. If I have 3 or 4 days of gray or rain or something like that, I'll have to run the Jenny for a couple hours to charge the batteries. But most of the year, during during trim season, of course, when we're getting a lot less light all of a sudden, we had to have trimmers here and so on. But now in the future, since we won't really be trimming here, we'll save some electricity that way too, or some. Yeah, it's really interesting when you live off the grid, because you just have to pay attention to everything. I have to make sure I have enough power to pump the water, right, from the spring, so that I can have water pressure, and then I have to make sure that I have enough gasoline if the batteries kick out, and then I have a gray water system and all those things, and I have to take care of my firewood, and I have my compost that I make, and then I also separate my garbage into 5 different things and so on. So, but all of that, it takes effort that, someone who lives in the city or the suburbs, they just take all that stuff for granted. And so it's a whole way of living in terms of, people think that permaculture is a lot about, just the land stuff. Well, it certainly is mostly that, but it's also about how all your systems of modern day survival kind of integrate with one another, your solar power and gray water and, septic tanks and all that sort of stuff. And so, we had a couple closed systems that we probably won't be able to use. Like we were using gray water around our house, but now the state's going to come and inspect our farm, and we're probably not going to be able to use our gray water. We probably have to just run it into a leach line and so on. So that's kind of a shame. But we used to use all the water we would get from our spring. We would move it like 200 yards to our house, and then we would use it twice, once, for washing and cooking and drinking and so on. And then the gray water, which was everything except the sink and the toilet, we would use for watering around the house and sometimes watering some of the garden plants too, right? And so I probably won't be able to do that. And things like that, where, it was a process where it just totally made sense, but the law hasn't really caught up with the fact that, one of the key things that we need to do is reuse our water, and gray water is a really important source. So maybe we'll change that law. And, I probably shouldn't say, but there's also the whole idea of humanure. And, ultimately with Dem Pure, you should be using humanure. If not on your cannabis crops or not on any vegetable crops, you should be using humanure around for your fertilizing your trees and various other things, because humanure is a great source of nitrogen and so on. But of course, that's totally out of the question as well because of all the laws and so on. So some things that actually make total sense in terms of permaculture are not particularly allowed by health authorities and so on. So eventually we hope to get that changed. But at the moment, it's like a whole different way of looking at the world. So that's one of the things about all of the closed systems with Dem Pure that. We have other ways that we do take our kitchen scraps and make scraps and make compost out of that. We do have our worm bin and all those things, and we try and recycle or reuse most everything. But anyway, it's always a work in progress. And so nobody's really sustainable if they're using gasoline. Is kind of my perspective, and we all depend on gasoline. So who knows?
So how has, you've been a farmer for a long time, how has the legalization over the last 2 or 3 years affected you, and how do you see that kind of playing out? I know it's affected everybody in the industry, especially this year.
Yeah. Well, that's of course a very good question, but a very it takes a long answer. Nikki and I have both been very involved politically here in Mendocino County, and also in Sacramento. Once I went up there and so on, and also involved with CCIA and NCIA, so on. So we're very involved on many levels of trying to actually get the ordinances changed, have some common sense brought into play. But what's happened is that in Mendocino County particularly, other counties are different. Some counties have totally banned it altogether. And Humboldt seems to, have embraced a bunch of it. Santa Barbara County is doing various things. But in Mendo, for some reason, there's an old boy network that just really wants to shut it down. There's some way in which the Water Resource Board and the Department of Fish and Wildlife would also like to get most of the growers out of the mountains at the headwaters, at the source waters. And so there's going to be quite a bit of many people here in Mendo have actually stopped growing. A lot of people put their land up for sale. And of course, as more land goes up for sale, the price drops. And part of the thing is that if you don't get a permit now, you won't be able to get a permit. And if you're smaller than 10 acres and you were growing in the past, you can't grow anymore. So an awful lot of people have just been cut out of the whole process. For us, we decided we were just going to go through and do it in however we could. And so we've had to have building inspectors and agricultural inspectors. We'll probably get the environmental sanitation inspector. We're going to get the state agricultural inspector. At a certain point, we've applied for permits for our buildings, so we'll get that. Fish and Wildlife will come out, and all these things. So it's like about exact opposite of our culture as you could possibly imagine. You know, I like to say in the old days that the biggest secret was the grower, right? And amongst the growers, the biggest secret was the water. Where did you get your water? And so now the first thing I had to do is give them the exact geographical latitude, longitude coordinates of my parcel and even my garden, and draw everything and so on. So I have a whole plot plan. So they know exactly where I am, how big I'm going, and they can, of course, see me on Google Maps too from the sky, count my plants and so on. So it's like there's no hiding anymore. And then they also want to know, okay, where do you get your water and what are the coordinates of that water, and are you legally entitled to how much and so on. So that's what's shutting down a bunch of people who felt that they had totally legal water from a spring or a pond or whatever it was. And then they've tightened up the rules so much that things that actually were legal in the past or not jurisdictional, they had no say over them. Many of those things are now issues, and people have had, after having done everything else, having complied with everything else, got all their permits and so on, at the last instance, they find out, well, actually, you don't have any legal source of water. So it's been really Mendocino County more than Humboldt, I think. Mendocino County is really kind of in a tailspin right now, and you know, the real estate listings are an all-time high, and nothing is selling. And we always said there were 10,000 growers up here in Mendo, and out of that, only not quite 900 people even volunteered or came in to apply for a permit. So about 9% of the total number of growers applied for a permit. And so far to date, I think it's not even 250 have been actually granted their permits. We have what the county has issued temporary permits, so we have a temporary permit, and we also have a temporary state permit. And at a certain point, we're going to have to then apply for a permanent permit. Of course, nothing's permanent in this business, from the state. But in order to do that, we have to get a few other, ducks in a row. We have to then, for the state, we have to put in, first of all, our agricultural plan. We have to have a pest management plan. We have to have a waste management plan. We have to have all of our legal structure, businesses, business licenses. And then also we have to have a permit from the county. And for the county, you need the ag inspector and so on and so on and so forth. So it's not like every other business in California needs to do these things. For us, it's very difficult because it's the complete opposite of what our culture was. We were completely secret, and now we got to be totally open above board. And the other part of it is that it's all at once, all of a sudden. So many other people had to come into compliance over 10 or 15 years, the new rules and so on. But now all these rules, we have to comply with all of them. And the other thing is crazy, they keep changing the rules because they find out the ones they put out don't work. So, so few people have signed up because of the rules, so few people have signed up because of the way the ordinance is written, and so on and so forth, that a lot of people have done the math and said, if I have to pay the taxes, have to pay testing, have to pay transport, have to pay, and in addition to that, have a lawyer, an attorney, a bookkeeper, there's no profit left. And so that's why people are just saying the heck with it. So far, we haven't said that, and we'll see how, it all depends on how this year's crop comes in, because basically up here, every farmer lives from crop to crop, from year to year. If you have a small crop, you can be really suffering. And if you have a great crop, then you can be a little bit comfortable. But all these fees and permits and investigate, all that, it's eating up the money very fast.
Yeah, and it's, for example, I went to Sonoma the other day, and so this rental guy tried to tell me with a straight face that $5 a square foot was reasonable, and the fact that I would then have to pay additional $6.50 a square foot tax per year on that place, on top of that $6 or $5 per square foot per month. I'm sorry.
Well, see, there's another,
and then I have to pay an excise tax. I have to pay whatever the local tax is. I have to pay the county tax. I have to pay the state tax. I'm sorry. There's no meat left on that for anyone. And that's the thing, is that it needs to be a sliding scale. It needs to be a percentage of income, not a flat rate. This way it scales with the ebb and flow of the markets, and it's not breaking anyone. And it's just something that a handful of regulators understand, but most of them don't. They just see a cash cow because cannabis has always made a ton of money, and like, yeah, it did, but now it's being bled dry. And I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah. No, it's well, I first of all called it death by 1,000 slices, and they're killing the goose that lays the golden egg, because I figured, I did some research a while ago, and I found out that the sheriff of Mendocino County claimed to have eradicated over 500,000 plants one year. And then he said that was 10%. And this is in a grand jury testimony. So the sheriff was saying in 2009, there were over 5 million plants in Mendocino County, right? Well, if there's 5 million plants and they were outdoors, if you put 1 pound per plant, that's 5 million pounds. If you put $1,000 per pound, which is what it was at least in those days, you got $5 billion. So if the county of Mendocino was bringing in somewhere over $1 billion at least, maybe $5 billion annually, with 10,000 growers, right? Now you've got 900 growers, right? Bringing in, so you've just cut your thing by a huge amount of what the income to the county is, right? But that $1 billion or whatever it was more than all other income to the county combined, whether it was other agriculture, whether it was tourism, whether it was manufacturing, whatever it was, add it all up together, it's still less than just what cannabis was bringing in. And the same with jobs. Half the jobs in the county were cannabis jobs. So you shut that down, and everybody says, so the other thing they say here in Mendo, you can't grow on a plot less than 10 acres. So if you've got, less than 10 acres, you can't grow. Well, some people estimate 30 to 40% of the growers were on those smaller plots. So you just wipe them out entirely. And these weren't people who were making big grows. They were just mostly supplementing their income, right? This is so that the people up here, there are not a lot of jobs, not a lot of work up here. So if you had 15, 20 plants in your backyard, you've got a kind of comfortable middle class life. You can buy a used car every once in a while, get some new shoes for your kids. Nobody's getting rich, and everybody's living from harvest to harvest, but you just cut it out. And I think we're going to have some social problems up here. But
it's going to totally collapse the economy of whole sections of the West Coast, because there's all the auxiliary jobs. The guys selling the oven bags, the guys selling the Ziploc bags, the guys selling the trimmers, the guys selling the trim trays, the guys selling the wax paper. The guys selling the food for all the trimmers and all the stuff that they need.
I think
it's
real similar to when the logging industry shut down. When you had that same area was so dependent on an industry that that even in a lot of cases, like the corporations that were doing a lot of the clear cutting and different things like that weren't local loggers that had been loggers for generations, but that was who came in, swooped up all the money, and the only ones that could afford to comply with any new regulations. So all you really did was wipe out everybody who was doing it with any sort of morality and leave just the corporations who you originally wanted to stop. And you saw a complete collapse among rural communities of just, joblessness, increased suicide rates, alcoholism, like so many different things, because in these rural areas, there's no gear to shift to, right? There's no like alternate economy that you can hop into that's just right down the street. Most of them were built on on mining and logging as their entire industries for as long as they existed. And so it's a much different blow to rural communities than it is to people that live even in moderate sized communities, even in some of these counties. We talked about the diversity of climates. It's the same thing with people in areas that you have places that have relatively dense populations of people in Northern California, but you also have the extreme rural ones, and trying to figure out like legislation and different things that apply to everybody it's a difficult task to even think about. But it usually in Southern Oregon and Northern California, all the legislation, that we've seen here and that you've talked about, pretty much eliminates a lot of those people that were just using it as owning a job, that it wasn't, nobody's getting rich off of it. They're paying their bills and buying stuff to live on and continue to go, but nobody's, like you said, nobody's getting rich off of it. And all of those people now will, that was very similar to logging. You had a lot of people that were just, cutting down some trees responsibly, not clear cutting, a number of different things were already being done by some places, by a number of different places and family logging corporations to make sure, because that was like taking care of their land, right? Just like in the same way you're taking care of your land to get a harvest, they knew 20 years down the road they would need to harvest something else. It was a much different product, but in the end, I feel like the same thing is going to happen. These rural areas, these people that depend on those are going to run into the same social issues that they ran into with the collapse of the timber industry, with nowhere else to go, no other jobs to get. They'll need help, and I totally agree with you on that.
No, it's a very important issue, and I think the parallel to the logging industry is really true. There's a number of senior citizens who come up to me and said, I can't do the work anymore. How am I going to survive, right? I just need 20 plants, but they can't do that. So, yeah, no, it's really can be really serious up here, and I don't think anybody in the government up here is really kind of conscious of that, all the different details and how people are just getting wiped out because, and the thing, like you said, they say that in a black market, a dollar bill goes around the community 7 or 8 times before it leaves. But what happened with the logging industry at the end is all that money went out to, Southern Pacific, Georgia Pacific or wherever it was. It left the community, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas most of the growers in the old days lived in the community and spent everything pretty much here, right? Of course, people took, their Mexican vacation and so on, but no, they lived up here and that was it. So now they set all these rules and regulations so that a big corporation can't eat because they're covered by the rest of the corporation. Whereas at mom and pop, they can't afford to lose money for 1 year. And so it eventually will, and so that's part of the plan, is to get the small people out of the mountains and everybody onto ag land and down in the valleys in Fresno and Merced and, Watsonville that way. And the only way that a farmer is going to survive is what we're hoping to do, is you just have a handcrafted, artisanal, top shelf, pure, the best, Cuban cigar kind of cannabis that you can grow. But not too many of those people are going to be able to survive because the mass market is going to do an amazing thing, and that's all going to come out of Central California. I heard about. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, I'm up in Washington, so we've been at it for a minute, and kind of my 2 cents on maybe a way to survive is co-ops. It's sort of similar to the Appalachian idea where, you'd pool together and the craft farmers would be able to sell a better quality, like you're saying, craft product. But it's hard. I mean, my neighbor right up the road there, it's like a $5 million build. We call it a tier 3. It's 30,000 square feet of canopy. And, that they're labeled and marketed as craft cannabis, and they have cute little logo, and, they hit it all right. Everything that we're saying, they're saying. And so that's why, I've been doing these conferences, and I put this long, elaborate name on it to make fun of that idea. The science of organic, regenerative, craft, homegrown, whatever we got. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, you have to remember we're living in America, and it's a marketing economy here, and it can be all about branding and also about yield and so on. But I think the co-op idea is a good idea, and there are a number of people doing it here in California. The thing is that it's tough to make a co-op because people have to get along.
Right.
And someone has to do all the work. It's usually 1 or 2 people who end up doing all the work. And the other thing here in the state of California is that they said that a co-op can only have a maximum of, what did they say? 16, no. No, they can only have a maximum of 4 acres in the co-op as cultivation area. And so that seems like all of a sudden, if you can each grow an acre, you only got 4 people in your co-op. Even like in Mendo, we can only grow 1/4 of an acre here maximum. So that would still only be 16 people in your co-op and not really very much actual canopy. So there's no power in that kind of small co-op. Now for California, it seems totally unfair because on the rest of it, there's no cap on the number of permits that an individual or a corporation or an entity can have, except there's a cap on the number of acreage that a co-op can have. So in California, we don't even at the moment, we're hoping to change that rule, but it's like, why screw the co-ops and let the big corporations go? And so once again, it's like, they ain't giving us nothing, man. They ain't giving us nothing. They've been persecuting us for 60, 70 years, and we got to squeeze everything out of them that we can possibly squeeze. And that means being at the table and engaging with them. And, I have a rule, you be nice with them 3 times, but after that, you get to scream. So that's kind of where we're at now. We're starting to scream at them, say, hey, you're killing us. And is that your intent? Well, then say so. Otherwise, don't give us this bullshit about protecting the small farmer, because all the rules are exactly doing the opposite. I'm sorry, I get worked up sometimes.
No, it's really work upable. I'm worked up too, and I'm in the pressure of it as well. And I'm legal, I'm licensed, and I'm having a hard time doing it. And it's not because I don't produce a quality product at all. It's all the other reasons. And honestly, I'm kind of like I'm in a low spot. So if you catch me another day, I might be a little more enthused, but I'm kind of like, man, I wish I would have sat on my ass and like maybe taken a break for a minute and let these big corporations burn themselves out and come in and truly be the, like sort of like beer had done, where it got really mass marketed. And then only in the last, 10 years has this kind of craft brewery beer and craft distillery idea really come into its thing. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I kind of want to tell people, when I see people gearing up, and they're kind of, same financial level as me. And I'm just like, I want to say, maybe you ought to sit on your hands for a year or two. I don't know, I don't have that answer yet, but that's where I'm at with it.
The county shut me down here in Oregon. So I can't grow outside anymore. And I can't grow from anybody besides myself. Before, legalization, I could grow up to 72 plants. And now I can grow 12, which is a card for me and a card for my wife. And I couldn't grow for any, like, even if my, cousin, even if my dad got sick, I couldn't grow for him. And the only plants I can grow are inside. And so for me, it was like a complete reversal. Like, I entered a type of prohibition that I didn't have before as a medical patient, right? Like maybe as a person, and that is as a citizen, I gained the right to be able to walk into a building and buy weed, which I didn't do anyway. So that seems a little irrelevant, but like I did gain that, but in terms of growing, it put a lot of medical patients and growers in the spot because you just don't have the same type of access. They want everybody going to the dispensary and buying what's there, and then they make regulations again that favor the larger grows to get it into the dispensary and keep smaller craft cannabis out and reduce the number of growers that can produce it. They use land zoning to control how many you can grow, where you can grow, if you can get a license, all these different types of things. Then you have inspections that you have to pass, like, all the different things that you have to get through in order to, like, just to be able to find that one little circle that you can make everything happen. And then they're doing that same thing in California. They're trying to box it in so that, only these little areas are going to be available, and you'll see the value of those properties shoot up. EFU properties here in Oregon have just skyrocketed, and people have gotten, there's people that I'm sure made more money on real estate than I've made in my entire life just in the past couple of years, because that's the difference in cost, is that if you, especially there's people that move in buy the property, get it licensed, and then just sell it. They never grow anything on it. Like nothing ever happens there, other than all they do is they say, here, it's licensed. There might not even be anything but the bare bones, like
75.
trailer
I
and
paid
shipping
75
container.
grand for my license in that same scenario.
Yeah.
I pay some dude $1,500 every month, and I've been doing it for 3 years. And I just today put my first sample after 3 years of paying this motherfucker into
Nice.
the market, and it took me all day. The printer broke, the everything. It was the most, I was just about crying. This little 1 gram sample of oil, just.
That's funny.
Well, you know what? It's now legal, but it's more illegal than ever.
Yeah.
That's the irony of it, and there's more ways that they make it illegal, more things. You're exactly right about the zoning. They've done that here in Mendo and all over. See, that's the way the county controls stuff, by zoning. The state says you can do this, that, or the other thing, but the county says, well, you can't do it here, you can't do it here, you can't do it there, right? And so it ends up that, they cut out. See, in Mendo, there's about 75% of the land that's not national forest. 75% of the land is either rangeland, forest land, or timber production zone. But they said after 2020, no one can put a new grow in that area. And only people who got registered and had grown before 2016 can grow there. And then if you sell your land, the guy who buys it from you can't grow there either. So all of that means that the only new grows can happen on ag land here in Mendo, and another one called upland residential forest. So the land value of that land is skyrocketing, and the value of everybody else's land is deteriorating as we just speak. It just went down another $1,000, and it's just a crazy situation. And I don't know what to say. Historically in American economics, you start out with hundreds of little producers, just like Marty was saying, that, all these little people, and that's what we had up here. That's what the lumber was. That's what automobile manufacture was, or long time ago. Hundreds of little people making, and then, like General Motors is actually 6 companies. So there was an Oldsmobile company and a Buick company and a Chevy company. They bought them all, right? After a while, there were 3 in America. And now all of a sudden, these cars and Korean cars and so on. But like the beer industry is a pretty good sample too, because 100 years ago there were hundreds of craft breweries because there weren't any national breweries because there wasn't national transportation. So every medium-sized town had its own brewery. And then all of a sudden it became Miller and Bud and Coors, and they wiped everybody else out. But now you're right. People all of a sudden, they don't want mass produced. They want something that's got soul. They want something that's got love and care in it. And that's going to be our only salvation for those who do actually somehow make it through, right?
And Budweiser's buying those guys out. You got to like.
Oh, that's true.
Ambev owns a whole bunch of different smaller ones that are just masquerading.
Oregon, a lot of the cool stuff in Oregon got bought up.
Yeah. Yeah, what can you say? It's the way America works. So
it is.
And like the press.
I was just gonna agree more with the farming idea. Ag and fishing. It's just you just go down all these industries, right?
Yeah. And like there's the whole farm to table movement and farmers markets and so on, and the small thing. And those people have a devil of a time just trying to make it because all the laws, all the rules, favor the big industrial. I call it petrochemical farming, and it's actually killing the land, but that's what's happening. So, yeah. Anyway, we just got to keep trying to make our best product that we can, and just try and do your branding and marketing. I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
Where are you in your process? Do you have a temporary permit, or are you fully?
I have a county temporary and a state temporary, and we have application in for what they call a lake and stream bed alteration agreement with the Fish and Wildlife. They're going to have to approve our bridge over our creek and our pond, and we're going to have to pay something for that. And then we're going to have to put in a rain catchment pond. This is crazy. I have 3 springs on my property. I have 2 creeks on my property. I have a pond also, and they say I can't use any of it for a commercial crop. I mean, there's like thousands of cubic feet of water go through here every year, and they say I can't use 100,000 gallons. So it's like, it's just crazy, you know? And this spring is on my land, and it's like, you know, isn't that my spring? You know, I'm trying to be environmentally correct and so on, but no, it's not your spring. That spring belongs to the state of California. And you better measure how much is coming out of that. And we're going to say you can only use a little bit of it, right? And okay, so the fish have to survive and the salamanders have to survive. And I understand all that. But somehow it seems a bit, you know, I mean, I have all these sources of water and now I still have to put in a rain catchment pond.
That's
What,
a
for
bummer.
$30,000 or something?
Right.
Who knows? Who knows? So
It's crazy.
yeah, so they get you going. But you know, the joy of it is still being able to grow this beautiful, beautiful plant, which is an inspiration. It's a healing thing, and you guys know that when you go out into your garden, just being out in the garden in those plants, just being there is a nourishment, is an uplifting thing. You know, and as they get closer and closer to harvest, you're out in the garden and they're embracing you, they're caressing you, and it's just this whole thing, and then they get personalities, and you start to realize, and then finally when they're cured and you're smoking them, and you just realize, oh wow, yeah, that's that flavor, that's that, you know, and that's that feedback that we get, and so we'll always have that. The question is, can we make a living at it?
Absolutely.
Just might have to
Swami,
dress food.
I'm curious about what you think about the percentage of the, you know, the upstate California crop that goes out to the rest of the country, because you know we were able to. I lived in New York, and in the mid '80s, I think we were able to we were getting a regular supply of California homegrown, you know, high quality cannabis in New York. So I'm saying there's been a regular supply going out to the rest of to the eastern states for a really long time, and this is kind of an elephant or a gorilla in the room too, isn't it? I mean, financially speaking, you're asking all these farmers to come in from the cold, but there's still, what about that market? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, in order to.
Well, I love. Thank you for bringing that up. I love to talk about that because it's my contention that up until whatever 5 years ago, the way the cannabis market was, that it was the one of the only, if not the only, example of laissez-faire free market entrepreneurial capitalism that ever existed, because there were no rules, right? You know, there were no rules. If you got too big, you probably got popped. But other than that, but we were able to deliver a joint to every high school in America, right? Every small town. It might not have been your top quality, but we could do it, right? There were no Coca-Cola trucks. There were no brick and mortar stores. There was no marketing plan. There was no public relations guy. There was nothing. And somehow this happened, right? And this was an amazing achievement because every police department and sheriff was trying to stop you. So how were we able to accomplish this? Like you say, you could get your regular supply if you had your connection back in New York. But the way it was is that everybody only needed to know 1 or 2 people. The grower needed to know maybe 1 or 2 buyers at the most. And, you know, people would come up here to the mountains. The story goes, they come up with suitcases full of cash, roll up a joint, smoke it, buy your whole crop. Go 5 miles up the road, do the same thing and buy the whole crop. And it was like 4,000 or 5,000 a pound, right? So everybody was crawling under the bushes. And if you got much more than like 8 or 9 ounces off a plant, you were tickled pink, right? People saved their urine and pissed in bottles all winter long to fertilize the plants, right? But that's what was happening. And so this was a whole underground economy. But the fact, how did it, a million random decisions, you know? Johnny moves out here and he has his cousin Joey back in Ohio, right? Or Susie moves out here and her friend Tony's in Long Island, right? Or, you know, Oscar moved up here and he's got his buddy Jack down in Texas, right? So They all just have a thing. Maybe, you know, a pound goes through the mail every once in a while, or someone has an RV or takes it down and so on. And occasionally there'll be a 10-pack or a 20-pack, something moving. But these were thousands of random decisions. And you didn't need an armored car, right? You didn't need a Coca-Cola truck. It was all kind of invisible. And, you know, $500,000 deals done on a handshake and a look in the eye, right? So all of that stuff is stuff that, you know, we had this thing dialed. There were some people doing bad stuff up on the mountaintops. There's no doubt about that. But there weren't too many of them to begin with, because the reason it cost $5,000 a pound is you could spend 30 years in jail, right? And that's why the biggest secret was always the grower. You know, the dealer could move, you know, all that, but the grower, that was the big secret. And the grower, like I said, only needed to know 1 or 2 buyers. And that buyer needed to only know 1 or 2 people back where they were taking it. And then that guy who was eighthing it out and quartering and announcing it out, he needed to know a lot of people. But they were probably all his or her friends, right? So this was a system that was like, well, a few people got popped, but not really that many when you consider the number of people who were involved in. But the key thing is it democratized the wealth. It meant that everybody got a little bit. Now, some of the dealers back in New York may have gotten pretty fat because they were, you know, making a big fat profit, but they had a huge risk too. But nobody was getting to be billionaires or millionaires or something like that. In the early days, a few of the big smugglers might have. But once we started feeding everybody from California, it was really a democratization of the wealth. So that was a genius. And then the problem is that the price got so big and it got to be more legal, and people come in and start to use pesticides, start to take bulldozers to the side of hills and start to do some really bad stuff. And a lot of us started to realize, hey, you know, that can't go on either, you know. And, you know, rat poison and things like that. So some bad stuff has really happened, but I kind of feel we could have, you know, got that under control. But at any rate, that's my rap about the old days and how all those people are going to be hurting now. They're really hurting. And the whole chain of supply. But there's some people who say that we overproduce for California's consumption, so that 70 to 80% of the total California crop went out of state. But what happened now is like there's 29, 30 states that don't need to get all their pot from California anymore. And you got Nevada and Oregon, Washington, Colorado, who really don't need any from California, right? And then one big thing happened just, I guess it was 2 years ago, right when Oregon had all of a sudden legalized a whole bunch of 1 acre grows, right? So it got all these new growers, people blowing it up, right, expanding like crazy, and they got an acre worth of grow. But it turned out that they didn't license enough testing labs. So most of the Oregon crop couldn't be sold legally because it wasn't tested. It was grown legally, but couldn't be sold because they didn't have the testing lab. So what happens? All that stuff gets dumped on the black market. And a newbie up there with a brand new 1 acre grow who can't sell it, she willing to sell it for just about anything, man, just to get some money coming in. So what happened is everybody then just drove right past Mendo and Humboldt right up to Southern Oregon and got that whole crop. And a similar thing happened out in Nevada too, when they didn't have enough crop, but all of a sudden they had to smuggle stuff in. So the black market is actually probably as strong as ever, except that the price is $600, right? And so it's not as lucrative as it was. But I guarantee you, well, what happened here in the dispensaries, once it went legal, foot traffic to the dispensaries dropped drastically. And basically what they found out that the only people coming in line to the dispensaries now were newbies, or people who knew they had a pretty exotic thing and they knew that dispensary would have it. But the newbies didn't buy nearly as much and didn't buy nearly as often. All the old timers, why would they pay 35%, 40% more out the door when they just go back to their street connection back in the neighborhood, right? Now, maybe it's not tested, who knows, but they're not going to pay double the price for their cannabis that they used to pay. That's just crazy. So a lot of dispensaries can't sell what they have as inventory. So I know many people up here in the mountains sitting on 40, 50, 60 pounds, 100 pounds. Some people still haven't sold 2016.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I was talking to someone, a very serious guy up in Canada, and I told him, look, in Washington, Oregon, and California, you can get stuff as low as $50 a pound. That's not bad. It's not the best stuff by any means, but it's
That's the
smokable,
lowest
and you
value.
could do something with it. But I've seen that in Oregon, Washington, and California from multiple people selling that on a wholesale market, at least that was legal, state certified. Okay, that's
No,
insane.
that is insane. Yep, that is insane. Plus, you've got the whole biomass thing happening where people just go up to Canada to get leaf from the hemp production and get biomass, and even though it's 0.03%, they can still get get enough THC and CBD to make these blends of manufactured stuff, right? So, and then most of the stuff from the greenhouses, there have been. I was down in Palm Springs, and they told me down there that there have been 3 grows certified, indoor grows of 3 acres, 125,000 square feet, 3 of them in the desert. Why? Because they're sitting on one of the biggest underground aquifers in the world. Of course, they'll drain it. But why grow? Oh, I'm sorry. Why grow indoors?
Yeah, I can't imagine that you'd need quite the extensive geothermal cooling there if you're going to make it any kind of profitable, because the air conditioning for anything in the Coachella Valley is insane.
Huge. Yeah, it's insane.
Yeah,
Yes, exactly.
you're looking at 120, 130 degrees every day for months. Like, you know,
Exactly.
you have to. And actually, I
Yeah.
talked to a couple of people down there, and we actually looked at some of the geothermal options. You could put quite the extensive geothermal system to actually air condition that, but it would be quite the build.
Yeah, yeah, right. They might even use water from the aquifer or something like that. But apparently, they have all these golf courses down there, but all the young folks under 40 aren't playing golf anymore. So I don't know what's going to happen. But it just seems so crazy that they're going to have these indoor factory grown. Oh well.
Yeah, it is really strange. I think anyone who's doing indoors will be out of business in 3 years,
You think so?
with
Huh.
a handful of exceptions, because the price point's not going to be able to support it with the lighting
Oh,
costs.
I suppose. Yeah.
If
Yeah,
you look
just
at
the
your
air
power
conditioning.
bill.
Yeah,
Yeah, and the
yeah.
air conditioning as well. Greenhouses you could do it with, but anything but a greenhouse where you're getting at least a large percentage of your lighting paid for is just not going to be long-term sustainable. Especially, I mean, we had Breeder Steve on last week, who's growing how many acres? He's 38,000 acres, I think he has, that he can grow on in Colombia. So when you got to be able to compete, or you're going to be toast.
Well,
Not that
yeah,
that's
but
not
I
that
don't.
that's short term in the United States by any means, but
Well, I was
Colombian
just
weed.
gonna add in
but
up here in Washington, public perception is crazy. I froze almost 200 pounds of my crop. I had to bring it in early. It was in a non lit up greenhouse, and I haven't had anybody look at it. Right? We're in May now, right? Almost June, and I just put my first sample out. I just went through this whole thing, and my whole plan was just to sell it to somebody. Do whatever the hell you want with it. I just want to get rid of it, fresh frozen, move on. But I've just talked myself blue in the face that greenhouse is better than indoor, or just as good, and I can tell them all the reasons why, and they don't give a flying fuck. They want indoor, and these are the
Yeah, it's
buyers,
funny.
the brokers, and it they don't. It's crazy. But it's because there's such a scale, right? You have everybody uses that term greenhouse, no matter what they're doing, or and there's in our legal system up here, there's so few people that have been in the industry that are making the decision. The decision makers haven't been growing weed for a long time, and so that you know how that, and they're the ones with the money, and so they're on the forums catching this and cutting the growers short, and it's a nightmare. And so the outcome is pretty poor weed, overall, except for the indoor stuff, because it's science. You can read that in a book, and you can, for the most part, just plug and play.
Yeah, but it's hard to grow organic indoors.
It is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of problems.
Yep.
Lots of problems. And the testing thing, I think, could be, I hope it really weeds them out, but I don't know. It just seems to me it has a lot to do with, it falls on us to educate people. You know, the reason indoor happened is up here in Humboldt and Mendo, so many people started getting busted. So people started, you know, having indoor houses where make it look like someone was living there, but they were growing in every room. And then people started to buy containers and bury containers and so on. And then after a while, people realized, well, gee, if we're going to grow indoors, we might as well go to Oakland. You know, you don't need to be up here and run the gauntlet every time going down to the city. So that's what happened, and then all that. But it was a decision, you know, forced on us by the government persecution. And then it turned out that, you know, why was indoor more expensive? Well, two reasons. It costs a whole lot more to grow it just for exactly that electricity. Come on, and paying rent on the building. So people think that what costs more is better. You know, that's just kind of silly. All right.
Right.
And then all the nutrients and all the, you know, air conditioning and everything else, it really is more. But then indoor, because of that, got all this bling, you know, all this crystal on it, you know. But that's also, you know, I've been a judge in the Emerald Cup for a long time, and you can have something that's just coated in crystal, and it ain't that good. You know? It's funny, you know. So, oh, great crystal and so on. Okay, well, what did that just tell me? I'm not sure what it told me, right? Because, like in the Emerald Cup, we're not just, you know, judging the actual, you know, how the stone is. We're looking at the whole thing. We're looking at the flower, the aroma, the taste, all that stuff, you know. And then, you know, and what is the full effect of it? You know, it's not just crash out, you know, wipe out stuff. It's like, you know, of course, we all tend to go more towards the sativas after a while to get the head space happening. So, anyway.
How long does it take to do all the judging for that?
For the cup?
Yep.
Well, it's been changing a bunch lately because, of course, this year, I don't know how it's going to be, but I can really only talk about the past. Because if we can only have legal growers this coming year, I don't know how many legal growers are going to be. But last year we had 430 samples, and the year before we had 650. But we get them for about almost a month, right? So the entries are open November 1st, and then we usually get our first batch to test around the 10th or 12th. And then usually by a little after Thanksgiving, we have maybe 100 samples we've tested. And then the last day, which is usually December 1st, it's going to be earlier this year. All of a sudden, there'll be like 300 or 400 entries, right? Because everybody wants to wait till the last minute, of course.
It's got to be
So then we divide
hard.
up. Well, you see, the thing is that, you know, over the years, we've learned how important terpenes are, right? So when I look at the samples, I'll go through and I'll first of all look at the trim and the shape of the thing, and if it's real shaggy and a really just skunky bud, I'm probably not going to look. But if it looks half good, then if it has no smell, if there are no terpenes in this thing, boom, I'm on to the next one. I can't be bothered, right? I got 400 to test. If you don't give me any smell, I'm sorry, you blew it. So that's one way. So in the end, we probably smoke actually about a third of all the entries because we can eliminate most of them. That by either just a very bad look or no terpene smell, or we get, you know, 100 OGs. You can say, well, okay, this one's got a little, but this one's got knock your socks off. So you can really do stuff like that. And then even when I do roll them up and smoke them, a lot of them just really aren't worth taking more than 1 or 2 hits because, you know, maybe they smell good, maybe they look good, but gee, they didn't flush it, or, you know, it's got this really heavy black ash, or just something about it's not worth smoking, you know. So, like I say, in the end of all the entries, we smoke about a third of them, and then the top 50, we usually smoke 3 or 4 times.
Okay, that's what
And
I was going to say.
By the time we get down to the top 5, we're smoking those, arguing and talking and so on. The first 50 pull out pretty quick, and then the 20, they also. But getting that top 5 in the right order is really kind of Well, it's a lot of fun. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And a lot of smoking.
How much? I don't know too much about it. I've never been. How much do the contestants put in as a sample? You know.
It's 3 ounces.
Okay, so that's
3
and
ounces.
there's how many judges?
Well, it usually 12 or so. But then
Yeah,
also
okay.
because it's a big show with lots of entertainers and musicians and so on, all the musicians want a little pack, you know, of the top 20, and so yeah, it gets spread out pretty quick. But in the end, of course, you look at what's left on the table, and the jar that's almost empty, that's probably going to be the winner, because people kept wanting to re-smoke it and re-smoke it and re-smoke it. The jar that's full over there, nobody wants to look at it anymore. So
That's
yeah,
for the
we do
musicians.
re-smoke them. Yeah, exactly. Well, no, the musicians, the headline musicians, they want the top 20. They ain't settling for less somehow. That's why it's 3 ounces. Plus, we have to send some in for testing, and each judge will get, you know, 1 sample, and then we have a semifinal round, you know, kind of like March Madness, and we'll get 50 back. So we'll get 50 of them a second time, and then when we actually, you know, meet for the final night to decide, we're smoking joints like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe. So, but that's a lot of fun. But we would, you know, because we only get a gram. So my joints usually 2.5 to 3 grams, right? So a joint for the Emerald Cup would be a little one like that. So even if I smoke 20 of them, I'm not getting, you know. And like I say, I don't smoke all of them. It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it.
Thank you for your service.
Happy to oblige. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to do it, I have to say. And over the years now, I think I've probably tasted over 2,000 different strains of, you know, that come in over the 15 years we've been doing it. So.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you. I mean, it's really cool to hear about. I didn't even know it was going on for 15 years. That's really neat.
Yeah.
So, all right. Does anyone have any other questions for Swami before we let him go? I think Josh.
Looks like he's just lighting up. I mean, he might get more
Oh,
interesting
okay.
here.
Yeah,
Do you have?
anyway,
Do you want to?
thanks for coming on. It's fun hanging out with you guys, and just.
We had a question from Chad. Is what's your favorite strain? On that, do you want to maybe touch real quick on the strains that you guys are growing this year?
Well, people always ask me what my favorite strain is, and I kind of never really know what to say, because first of all, it kind of depends on what time of day, what I'm moving in. But more than that, over next to my chair here, my sofa, I've got jars with probably 15 or 16 different strains sitting over there. So at any one moment, I could eat any of them. So it's more of a kind of random, intuitive. I pick up the jar, smell it. No, I'll pick up another jar. Okay, I'll smoke that one. So I don't really, I have to say, I don't really have a favorite strain. And but we had some strains in the past. Shakti Pot is one we try and keep going. And we've got one called Queen of Hope, which is a really, really high, like 20-point CBD one. And we've got some others that we're working on. I think we're going to do Durban Spice this year, and so on. So, yeah, we still have to figure out which ones are the strongest ones of all. We've got nine strains we're starting this year, and we'll see how much of which one comes out and strong and so on. There's a cherry something or other, and yeah. But anyway, it's just, to me, what strain I like at any moment is just kind of whatever pops into my mind, whatever's intuitive and so on. And every once in a while, there's a couple I know are CBD high, and I might use those and before I go to sleep or something like that. But more often at night and before I go to sleep, I might, you know, take a hit of hash or something like that, just to mellow out.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any other questions? So do you want to tell people where they can find your the stuff that you grow? I know you're in I forget what the name of the group is that sells your
Well,
flower
we're
there.
working with
I have it.
Flocana.
Flocana, that's it.
Flocana, the phone app, and they delivery, retail delivery, and they also do wholesale. And they'll be taking our things down to Southern California now too. Up here, where you can find our flowers at Barbary Coast in San Francisco, right downtown. At Harborside Health Clinic over in Oakland, right near Alameda, and also at was it Emerald Farms up in whatchamacallit, Hopland up in Mendo, and also at Healing Harvest Farms, which is where the home of the Emerald Cup. And there'll be a few other places that we're going to have, but you can also, like I say, just do a phone app from Flocana, and they have a whole list of places that's in stores that I don't even know about because they're distributing it out. But you can always look for the Swami Select jar, like this, and Sun, Moon, and Star Grown. And actually, this jar is a special kind of jar. It's called Miron glass, comes from the Netherlands, and it's actually purple. It's not black. So it lets in what are known as beneficial ultraviolet rays and keeps out the bad ones. So it's better at preserving any kind of flowered herb. And so that's one of the special things about our jars is that they are particularly designed for like they're apothecary jars for herbs or something like that. So we hope people then get them and reuse them, for their own herbs and stuff like that. Well, that's where we are. We're being opening some places down in Palm Springs also, and in Southern California and LA and San Diego. We're working on getting some stuff there, and either Flocana or possibly, it'll be Flocana most likely delivering it to down there. Because see, Flocana is kind of in some ways kind of semi a cooperative. They work with about 3 or 4 different cooperatives like Humboldt High Five and Emerald Growers, and then also the Mendo Gen and so on. And they've got about 100 farmers now. How it all turns out when everybody gets legal, we won't know. But they do a whole processing thing where they'll trim your cannabis, they'll package it, and so on. They're also a distributor for Willie's brand, and Willie's Reserve, and so on. So yeah, Flocana's. They bought a big old winery right outside of Ukiah, and they're really hustling to make it all happen. And they're the ones who are really featuring the sun-grown farmers. That's their whole thing, is to feature the farmer and focus on sun-grown organic farmers up here in the Emerald Triangle.
We had a question from chat. It says, does Swami have any tips for germinating Lawrence's passing gift? Never really grown CBD.
Well, actually, one thing you can do for your Ringo, right. Well, I wouldn't know specifically about that, but for cracking your seeds, popping your seeds, one of the things, you can soak them in water for a couple hours or maybe overnight before you sprout them. And some people actually, put them in their mouth to kind of put an enzyme thing on them. Sometimes if it's an old seed, it can have sort of a kind of a mold or mildew film over the top. So there's some ways that I'm not sure. You might research and see if a little hydrogen peroxide, but more than likely just washing it off and maybe putting it in your mouth if you have a few of them. And then when there are many ways to sprout. Sometimes I used to sprout a lot between paper. This year we actually sprouted directly into soil in the little mini pots. But when I put the seeds in, like I say, they get a drop of Ganges water. So, give a blessing to the seed as you put it in, and put your, make a personal connection to that seed as a living entity. That, there's something amazing about a seed, though, because a seed needs several things in order for it to sprout. And so it needs water. It needs a certain amount of warmth. And it needs some sort of darkness, but not too dark. And it also needs to kind of be aware of the diurnal day-night cycle, right? So I figured it's like there's 4 things that the seed itself has to be kind of aware of. And then you say, well, gee, it doesn't have ears or hands or anything. How can it be aware of this? But there's something in the seed that's aware of whether it's got moisture, whether it's warm, whether it's got darkness, and so on. But it's also, if it's missing any one of those 4 things, it doesn't sprout. So if you put it in the soil, you want to put it about, a ½ inch or 3/4 of an inch under the soil and cover it over, because it needs to be sort of in darkness. And so when it does that, now I feel that there's also got to be, okay, there's the 4 things it needs, but there's also, to me, that seems like there's got to be something, a 5th thing. And that 5th thing is consciousness. So the 5th thing is kind of keeping track. It says, okay, I got water, I got heat, I got day and night, and I got a little darkness. Let's go, right? But all of a sudden, there's no water, and it stops, right? And so on and so forth. So there's some sort of conscious decision-making awareness within the seed that says, I've got the 4 things I need, let's go. And if it doesn't have them, it doesn't. So to me, there's already a kind of a cellular awareness in this plant, which is responding to stimuli and has a consciousness to make a decision to actually start to sprout. And that consciousness carries all the way through the plant until we actually smoke it. And if you put your nurturing touch on that from the beginning, then the plant is going to grow to please you. So if you want the CBD, the first crop of CBD that I harvested here, it was kind of interesting because Harborside was just starting to test for anything. And they helped fund the setup of Steep Hill Labs, which one is the first labs down in Oakland. And so they've tested CBD for the first time. And that was, I think, 2008 from 2007 harvest. And it came back that there was one plant whose name I forget now, I should be looking it up, who had more balance, about 8 THC to 7 or so CBD. And then I had 2 plants, one that was called Ganjaman, another was called Royal Purple, and they both had kind of a 1-to-1 ratio of CBD to THC. And this is something that we all thought. I was talking with Steve D'Angelo, and he said, we thought that this was gone, that this whole compound of CBD had been bred out of Northern California cannabis because everybody wanted to get the THC. But it turns out it's never bred out. It just have to breed to make the concentration happen. So that was some of the first CBD. But since I'd already harvested and it wasn't a clone, it was a seed, I didn't actually know which one it was. So the next year I went and just grew out like 15 different seed strains, tested, and finally found the one that actually had the CBD. And we kept that going. We've had the Ganjaman Royal Purple. But now we've switched over to Queen of Hope, which is another one that's really high CBD. And yeah.
What kind of levels are you getting for CBD out of the Queen of Hope?
Well, at one year we tested at 20 CBD and 0.7 THC. So it turned out to be a ratio of 28-to-1. But, it's not just everything, because apparently all different diseases have a different ratio, which seems to work the best for them. Some real medicinal effects require really high THC. And, I got a joint going. Nikki wants to get a hit here.
Have you, do you think there's like a, some kind of structural trait or something? Have you seen that is, something that connected with the CBD that you've noticed? Anything else other than just that it passes the test for high CBD? Something, some other visual, some other trait that relates to CBD. Sorry.
Interesting. Well, the first year that we actually grew CBD, I think it was just because I wanted to grow it so badly. And the plant heard me. And there's a symbiosis with the plant that it just responded that way. So I have such a mystical thing about this plant that, I talk to it, but more I listen to it and let it hear. So now, as far as structural characteristics, my friend Mean Gene, who's a great breeder, he can actually tell a CBD plant while it's growing. But this guy is something special. He's been breeding and growing since he was 12 up here in the mountains. That's why his name is Mean Gene. You know, he's a mean geneticist. And so he can look at a plant or a flower or something like that and pretty much tell you what hillside it grew on in Mendocino County. And he also can tell you, oh, that's going to be a CBD plant or that's not. We had another strain up here called In the Pines that we grew for a while, and it sometimes would present THC high, and other times it would present a CBD high. So it's I don't know what the real physical structural qualities would be that, because you see the whole idea of indica sativa just doesn't even count anymore, because an indica or sativa can present any ratio of THC to CBD, and they can present any combination of terpenes. And so I think I'm trying to figure out this formula. I think that what you really need to know about cannabis when you're purchasing is, number one, is it organic? Number two, is it pesticide free? Because that's not necessarily the same thing. And then number three, is it grown in the sun? Those are my first three things, right? Okay, the next thing is you really want to know THC to CBD ratio, right? And the third thing, you really want to know the terpene profile. So those last two things are really going to tell you what the effect it's going to have on you. Whether it's indica or sativa, but that is to say fat leaf or thin leaf, doesn't matter too much. And so that's the issue, is that those are the things you want to know. But after you know, is it pesticide or organic sun, then you want, okay, what's in this stuff and how's it going to affect me? And to me, there's something about the terpenes, that the terpenes actually give you a precognition of what the cannabis will do for you. Because say like you're in a small room and someone opens up an orange peel. All of a sudden, everybody in the whole room is tasting orange, right? And their whole body is like getting this message, oh, vitamin C is coming, this freshing. So that's the way terpenes work. Because you had a pleasant experience with that flavor, that aroma at another time, when you smell that aroma, that fragrance, all of a sudden your body now with that pleasant experience. That's why you want to smoke that one today, right? So as we get more sophisticated with our cannabis consumption, we also want to get more sophisticated with our cultivation to create a greater variety of terpene profiles. There's a who just made fermented fruit juices. He's making mango juice for his plants, and does that make myrcene come out more? I don't know, but it's worth trying. If he's got huge apples that he's making a fermentation and put those in, what's that going to happen? Because there's all these different things. So the whole terpene thing is a very exciting frontier that we're just starting to come into, how very important it is. But the key is I harvest before sunrise to get my maximum terpenes. But what do we do to direct and control the terpenes that we want? That's a new frontier, I think, because your nutrients have a great deal to determine what your terpenes are. Nutrients are really, really important in creating the terpene profile. So I think that's something that we're all working toward getting more aware of.
Yeah, I've done a lot of work with some pretty advanced lactobacillus ferments with specific plants, and doing like phycocyanin isolates for your base building block proteins for chlorophyll A, chlorophyll B, and some of the other funky proteins. We found one protein in one plant that helps a lot with like mold resistance and other stuff. So I think that's kind of the new frontier of this, is getting away from pesticides and just boosting what the plant wants to produce to get rid of this stuff on its own. Just like you're saying.
Well, it produces the terpenes in order to keep the pests away in many cases, and that's also, so yeah, it produces, and that's why it produces the max terpenes just before sunrise, because most of the problems that a plant is going to have are in the dampness of the night, and that's when things attack it. So it puts out maximum terpenes at that point to protect itself. So, yeah. Anyway, I think I gotta go now, guys.
Sure. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I really do. Thank you so much. Do you want to tell people?
Yeah, well,
Do you want to tell people how to find you and what your website is? I have it in the description.
Yeah.
As well.
Okay, well, the website is just called swamiselect.com. And so we do a weekly blog there, and we also list kind of other stuff that's cannabis relevant. And then we do a thing called Smoking with Swami, which is on YouTube. You can go on YouTube. We've done about over 60 of them now, and they tend to be about 15, 20 minutes long. And we sometimes it's just Nikki and me rapping, but a lot of times we interview, people who are very involved in the cannabis thing. So we just smoke a big fatty and have a good time. So that's Smoking with Swami. And we're Swami Select.
Instagram, Facebook.
And we're on Instagram and Facebook and all those other things. So, yeah, I'm sure you can find us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for taking time out of your day to come on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. It's been a gas, and thanks for the other guests having some good questions and so on. So, anyway, happy trails.
Yep. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
So, what's new with you there, Dutch?
Working. I'm 1 week into dep. That's new. Depped the center row of my greenhouse. Yeah, it took me maybe a couple days to kind of get everything tucked in proper and get some proper airflow in there. And I'm actually having to sort of beginner's mistake, or really just a time crunch mistake. I'm getting too much overgrowth on the sides, so I'm having to chop it back a little bit on the sides to make sure I don't have buds, hanging out on that plastic. So luckily it's not my first time growing, so I know a little bit about not doing that. But yeah, and other than that, I've been doing the thing, planting. Built a hugel bed. I have a guy actually hit me up on Instagram from watching the show here when we came on with Elaine, and he's helping me out, and so it's super cool. Yeah, and we built a hugel bed. He built it with my direction, I should say. Full credit. And we put all those clones in there, or not those clones, all those seedlings. Let's see here. I can flip it on.
What's a hugel bed?
It's
What
a
is that?
fancy term for a raised bed with sticks and straw underneath it. I mean, that's kind of what our modern cannabis people are doing, and what I did. And it's a old German technique where they would dig a hole and bury logs, and then mound up the dirt and plant all their seeds, and then come back later in the season, and it's a water saving technique. The logs will store the water. For my purpose, it's a raised bed. It's getting my roots off of the clay down there so that they'll grow better. But yeah, so and in the process, I soaked the shit out of this bed, so these plants are over watered right now and kind of unhappy with me. But that's a lot of, actually, part of doing it like this actually was talking with you on here about how you do your plants small, and do those sifts small. And so I was like, yeah, dude, I don't need to grow these out. I just put them all in right now, and we're going to build a dep over it, and we'll dep it here in a week or two. And it'll be kind of cool, because it's this little section here as well, and you can just sit there and look at it. I'm excited. It'll probably make the selection a lot easier, I imagine. So I'm excited. And we're starting another little. I don't know.
So those are seedlings.
These are all
seedlings.
yeah, they're all seedlings.
Oh, yeah.
I think there's about 12 to 14 varieties here.
Fabulous.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know. The more I've been listening to breeders talk about making selections, and I'm like realized, how I've kind of done myself in. It's going to be really hard to sift through this.
It's cool. It's cool. Oh, yeah. If you got males, you can probably pull males out, and
yep,
make room for the females, and either don't save the males or save them, save the select ones, or put them in pots. You can cut them back drastically and stick them in pots and make room for the females. But they're not going to get, looks like, right, this is pretty late in the season, so they won't get that huge. They'll probably have space somewhat, right? Some of them
Oh,
can
yeah.
shoot up, depending on the genetics.
It's
Some of
not
them
that
could
late.
fire up pretty big.
I've grown 14-foot plants that were planted later than this.
Oh, absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's not late. It's not late in the season.
Well, no, and I'll probably dep it too once they really start moving.
Yeah.
Because my goal here isn't to crop on it. It's just to make selections for next spring.
Yeah. But I know you're a lot further north, right? You're in Washington.
Yeah.
Steve's only 4 hours north of me. You're like, whoa.
Yeah. Well, and technically they tell people not to plant, even tomatoes outside till the 20th or something.
Yeah. Usually stuff does better planted late. That's exactly right.
Yeah. As was what's going on here. I think I've showed you guys. I planted this really early, and it's all starting to come back now that it's warm. They're starting to come back together.
That looks great.
But they were struggling there pretty bad.
Yeah.
For a while.
I think I remember. Yeah, because it was cold.
It was real cold. These ones were the worst down here, and they're just starting. These are Sin Mint cookies.
Yummy.
Yeah.
Yummy. Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm all planted up. That's kind of what's new with me. I still have more plants. I have probably another 100 or so plants I could plant. They're kind of all over the place and different stages of health, like these guys. I kind of basically forgot about this. Is like 100 plants. I just all right, you're out of my mind, and I just didn't have enough time or resources to get to them. So last week I was like, all right, I need to bring these back to health. Like I got those plants planted, and so I've been giving them compost tea. And
are they clones or seedlings?
Yeah, these are all clones. These are all Sinex too.
All one thing.
These are all Sinex. Yeah.
Yeah.
Someone gave them to me, and
monocrop.
Yeah.
So you're gonna go to hell.
Yeah.
No. Just kidding.
Well, this is a monocrop of, it really is.
Yeah.
So these guys are probably gonna get flipped next. These are the Sinex too in the front that aren't doing. They don't like life. I just think it's a weak plant, and I've heard that from other people. But in the same bed, look at this. Some of them are doing great, and there's a handful that aren't.
They're just needy.
Yeah. Look at this.
Yeah. Oh.
But then these guys back here, they just got a serious hack job today, but they're doing great. Other than they, just got beat up.
Gotta get rid of them needy bitches.
Yeah, totally. These guys are.
Yeah, I don't tolerate needy bitches.
Oh, but the smoke is so good, isn't that what
I
they
know.
say?
I know. Well, what you do is you breed them. You breed them, and then if their daughter is so much better, still got all the nice smoke qualities, but is not all needy and is nice and big and tough, then you toss out the undesirable needy mom and just like, hey, yeah, well, she doesn't make it great anymore. The daughter is much better. It's easy to do. Well,
So
I
this
shouldn't
is
say
interesting.
it's easy,
Here,
easily possible.
This is a result. These are all the same plants.
It's got
everything.
Mr. Green Jeans is the whole Woody Allen aspect to cannabis breeding.
I'll take that as a compliment. Yeah. Oh, it looks great.
Yeah, I was just saying this here, this section in the middle, that nothing. It's just these plants aren't doing it. It's a low section, and I didn't really. It took me a minute to realize it, but I have this little ditch over here.
Yeah.
And it's the wettest part right here, and it was last to hold water. And this bed, I still haven't applied any water. I've had these plants in here for 2 months, and I haven't turned the water on. It's still been just too wet, and so it just went anaerobic and gank. And I think I'm just gonna have to let it dry out and really reheat it with some compost tea and maybe sit this run out on this little section. So that's a bummer. But these are I'm excited about these plants. These were also given to me.
Yeah, those are great.
Afgui.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, and they have really nice leaves. I don't know. I like these Afgui leaves.
Oh my goodness. Huge. Huge.
Yeah.
Those are great.
Yeah, and in here it's full up to top. Like I'm gonna be buds to the top of this thing. I'm probably gonna have to add another purlin or two in the trellis to keep that space.
Nice. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm cloning, and
Yeah.
the plan is I could bring this one down the first or the second week of July. Literally, I have I'm gonna have 3 days to take that row down, kind of by myself, before the conference that we're doing in Steve's part of the world.
Yeah, you
So
want to
that'll
tell
be-
everyone about that?
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit before, but we got a website up. It's regenerativeorganiccannabis.com, and it's an aquaponics course, the science of regenerative cannabis aquaponics course. Yeah, and we're gonna do a week-long deal. Look at this little duck. She's sitting on eggs, so she's kind of not too happy with me. So it's going to be a week-long course. First 3 days, we're going to be with Dr. Elaine
He
Ingham.
just showed a duck.
Yeah.
Oops. Sorry, I'm narrating to my friend. I'll turn up.
There we go. Yeah, we'll do 3 days with Dr. Elaine Ingham, and she'll go into microorganisms, the soil food web, the aquatic food web. She's going to do a microscope portion, how to use a microscope to identify these organisms, how to quantify them per area, so you can, say there's this many, fungi, there's this many nematodes, there's these type of nematodes. Teach you how to identify the different ones. And then we're going to go into a day with Suzanne Wainwright Evans. She's an IPM, integrated pest management, beneficial insect specialist, really an insect specialist. And she goes by bugladyconsulting.com. She's very passionate about insects, very knowledgeable. And she definitely visits more greenhouse space than anyone I know, or probably have talked to in my experience. She goes and sees these, 20-acre facilities of poinsettias, and it's really interesting. She tells, poinsettia growers don't make very much money. They make, I think 10, 20, 30, 50 cents a plant. It's taking their two gals, or whatever, 1.5. So you can imagine try growing that much cannabis and having to have your numbers so tight. And so that it's really important that everything you do, you buy has to work. It has to be very efficient. So that's her stick, only using bugs and how to deal with them. And then the last day, we're going to have Dr. Faust from BioAg. He is a humic acid and fulvic acid specialist, to say the least. He's most of us know about his full humics or Humisolve products that have been around forever. That's one of the only things that I actually still use from when I started, is the Humisolve or full humics every once in a while. So he's gonna talk for half a day, and then we're gonna have Chris Trump, who was on here 2 weeks ago, Korean natural farming, and he's gonna talk about how that it's basically the idea is it's a biostimulants day to hit all the nutrient requirements that we're not able to meet with our fish waste. Yeah, anything you can add, Steve? Oh yeah, there's a bonus round on Saturday. Yeah, I'll let you talk about that.
Sure. So I got together with Scotty, and we'll be doing the DGC Cup NorCal / Bay Area, whatever you want to call it, a nug throwdown just down the street from where we're going to be having the class at with Dutch. It'd be just down the street from Ouroboros Farms. We're keeping the location just for people that are coming, but it's at a private event place that allows this kind of stuff, and there aren't too many of them. But thankfully, we are able to host quite a big event there, and it's not too far from the ocean, and it'll be a really good time. You'll have quite the blast, and that'll be real affordable and everything. So if you end up coming down, you'll have a really, really awesome time. Get to hang out with a bunch of really awesome people. And if not, if you can't afford to come down for the week, come down for Saturday and come parties.
Yeah, and I, just to, dude was on last week, and he brought up, just that, if you have any interest in being like a real, serious in the aquaponics, serious aquaponics world, this is a pretty spendy course, but it's a resume and a half builder. And I thought that was a pretty good point. You the information that we did last time when we did one on the soil in Humboldt, it's like, I've done 2 of these conferences and a 2-day microscope course with Elaine, and my knowledge is just leapfrogged in the last 6 months. It's been really cool, and I wish something like this would have been available. I think we all do. It would maybe not. It's been a fun journey learning it. Maybe the hard way, but there's still more to learn. There's still more to discover, and yeah, I just think it's a very spendy deal, but it's very worthwhile, and I just want to shout that out.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun, and like he's saying, it really will be kind of an experience of a lifetime. If you really are looking to push, the farther end of your aquaponics skills, this is really the place to come if you want to really push flowering crops, even if you're not into cannabis. I just want to grow stuff that flowers or fruits or and things like that. You're going to learn a heck of a lot, but it'll all be commercially applicable. Everyone that's going to be teaching in this class works with commercial scale farms or owns one or the other. So it'll be quite the awesome experience, and that is July 16th through 20th, held at Ouroboros Farms, and the link to the website is in the description of the video here.
Cool.
And then we'll
yeah,
also,
and it's a small course too. We're limiting it to 29, I believe, and so there's just a lot of benefit in that learning too, because you get to have questions, and those questions get to compound, and it's not like you're in a big group where you're like intimidated, and the speaker can really just start jamming with you. And it's, Elaine is pretty amazing. She goes for it and goes hard, and it's a blast. She's real fun. So.
Oh yeah, I know it was really awesome having her on the show again. We'll have to have her on again sometime.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. And is there anything else you wanted to talk about with your garden or anything, or what coming up?
No, I'm just doing my thing. Yep, but I'm actually gonna have to bounce out. I haven't eaten any dinner, and I'm pretty tired. I've been getting up really early, pulling those tarps off because I have lights all over the place. So I have to leave that tarp on all night right now. So.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I just have like anxiety about it too, and I'm not sleeping that well. I'm like, I gotta get up and pull that tarp. I gotta get up and pull that tarp. All night, just kind of.
That's funny. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, great show. Have a good night, guys.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye. What have you been up to, Mr. Green Jeans? As he desperately tries to finger his phone and hit the unmute mic button. Still trying.
Hang on, there we go. Yeah, not much. Just doing usual gardening and stuff. I got this really cool beta I was trying to show. Beta, as you said. He's really cool. He's just really cool. It's called something like what is he called? He's called a Dumbo beta or something like that.
Oh, nice.
Because he has these really long pectoral fins. You can see. I don't know if you can see it as well. I'm not getting a great shot there, but
yep,
you can see a little bit there. He's got these gigantic pectoral fins. So they call him a Dumbo. I think is he a double tail? No. Anyway, yeah, he's cool.
Nice.
Yeah, and just that, and yeah.
Very cool.
Running the garden. They made a bunch more rosin. Oh my God.
Nectar of the gods.
And nectar of the gods. Oh my God. Trying to figure out how to smoke it. Yeah, it's difficult still. I have
Gotta
the
order a
wand.
nice glass banger.
I'm gonna have to do something. Yeah. This one's breaking. It keeps cracking. The quartz end of it. It's got a tip like a two. It was 2 inches long, but the end keeps breaking off. And I guess it's something I'm doing wrong. Am I heating it too hot, or what's the deal there?
No, they
You
just
know anything about
destroy
that?
themselves if you're using a quartz nail.
Maybe it's a cheap kind of quartz or something, or no? It
No,
just
no, quartz nails just don't last more than about a month or so if you're
yikes,
actually a regular
really?
stoner. Yeah.
Because you could pay hundreds of dollars for one, right?
No,
One, a big.
no. I have a nice. In fact, I'll show you. I use these. I got two different bangers. So I got this one for the blowtorch,
Yeah,
course, but nice quartz banger. And then I
yeah.
got a smaller one for my e-nail rig. It's slightly smaller than that one.
So that you expect that to last, though, right? That's not going to like blow up after.
These last a little bit longer, but these are still 6 months probably or a year. Here's my
Really?
little one. Here's
Oh.
my little one, but I'll show you. Will it reach? Maybe it'll reach. So this one, it's not on right now. Oh shit, I'm just rolling my dabs all over the room. So this has a piece that goes
Yeah.
like this in the electronic part.
Oh yes. Yeah,
So you
that's the
put it on
nail.
that, and then it
That's
sits on the
electric.
stem.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a stem that sticks out on the side.
Yeah.
It sits on there.
Yeah.
Makes it really nice and easy for you to see. You can just kind of sit on there, and it
Yeah.
heats your dab up to whatever
Uh-huh.
temperature.
Yeah.
But I use that most of the time. Just once in a while, I'll take it off when I'm cleaning the other piece.
Uh-huh. And what temperature is good to heat that to?
I like to have mine like 510.
Could I use
500
that? Could I use the
520.
PID that I have for my press? Would
Yeah,
that work for that? It would,
yeah,
huh?
you can, yeah. You just get the cord. But yeah, if you have a PID or if you're a brewer and you do a
Mm.
bunch of stuff with brewing, and you have PIDs laying around, you can totally make your own.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
You just take a heat gun. A lot of them though, like my PID, the number on the thing doesn't remotely match the temperature of my coil. So I had to like get my laser thermometer and see and make like a chart for myself.
I
But
see.
that's not a big deal. You know, you have to do that once when you first buy it, and who cares? You know what I mean?
I've been wondering about that with the press because I still haven't gotten a hold of a laser thing. I can tell that it's very consistent, but I'm not sure about the temperatures exactly that I'm using, and it could be way off. So,
All right.
yeah, anyway,
All right.
yeah.
Well, I've been getting helping out down at the farm at Ouroboros, doing a little bit more work with the plants down there, doing some little building down there. We got a whole bunch of we got two giant pumpkins, two giant watermelons. We got some other really cool crops, planted some funky stuff that I ordered online. We finally apparently the the reason why we couldn't grow peppers it wasn't it was didn't apply to peppers. I guess it's just for tomatoes or something, so I misunderstood. So I guess we're gonna try and grow some of the cool peppers I was gonna grow this year, so that'll be really cool. And yeah, just planting a bunch of funky stuff and helping out down there, getting the company off the ground, basically filling out a bunch of paperwork for licensing, but I think the end is near for that. I think we're gonna actually be fully filed for all of our shit here in the next before
That
too long.
party is this Saturday or next Saturday?
What
The
party?
the
it's
one you guys
It's the 21st of July.
of July. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's already the 24th of May.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's what I said when I looked at the clock this morning. I was like,
That was amazing getting Swami on there, and yes, and it must be like once a week that people are emailing me about about seeds and what are we still live? Yeah, everybody who's asking me about cherry bomb, go to Swami. That was him.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
The other next week we have Julia Di Crescenzo. She's a woman who has a aquaponics farm in Italy, and she is going to be staying up very late in her time zone to join us on the show. She is really cool because she has actually grown saffron in aquaponics, which I know a lot of people are looking for non-cannabis high-value crops, and she is someone that has grown some of the highest value crops in aquaponics that I am aware of. So it'll be really neat to have her on and to talk about some of the different funky stuff they're doing over in Europe and in Italy, and the different crops that they're growing there, and some of the different research that they've been doing. So she's going to be coming on next week. I also have, hold on, I'll tell you who else I got in the docket. We're going to have Rasta Jeff from Grow From Your Heart podcast. He's going to be joining us soon. I got a couple of other people. I've been working on getting us another crop, a really awesome guest and stuff. So I'll leave a couple of these other people as a mystery for now. But we have quite a few people lined up for the next couple of months. But again, if you guys do know someone that's really cool you'd like us to have on the show, please shoot me an email or any of the other panelists, and we will do our best to get them on. Generally pretty good about it. The only person we're still trying to get on is at the moment, I think, that we haven't had on is there are two people, Mark from Bubble Man, and what's the other gentleman? Jorge Cervantes, and both of them just from scheduling issues. We keep having really bad times on when I have an open week, they don't. So we will have those solved again at some point. But yep. But again, if you guys have any other great guests, let us know. Please check it out, ouroborosfarms.com, if you want to come check out any of the classes. I know we have another aquaponic cannabis class on June 23rd and 24th. We also have a CBD dinner, farm to table CBD dinner at the farm at Ouroboros, which would be very cool, on the 23rd as well. What else do we have going on? Check the schedule at ouroborosfarms.com for the schedule. We put most of the schedule together a couple of days ago, so it should be all updated. If not, it will be updated shortly in the next couple of days. And all different types of classes going on. I know we're also going to be adding a couple of other cool stuff to that before the end of the year classes. And more information coming soon. Oh, thanks again. This is the second week we were launched on weedtv.com. Thanks again for having us over there, and we will fully transition. I think what we need to do is just add a chat box to the website, my website over and make one page specifically for growing with fishes, and put the chat over there, and then we can migrate completely off of YouTube. So it'll be great. But it takes a little bit of setup and time, so we're not quite there yet. But thanks a lot for everyone watching, and thanks a lot again for Swami, SwamiSelectSeeds.com, if you're looking for more information on him. And thanks a lot for all the other panelists. And thanks a lot for everyone watching. Big support. I know it's been a little bit of a struggle with us swapping podcast platforms. And thanks a lot. We actually were up to 18 viewers at one point on the live stream again, which is, we're almost up to the 20 to 30 that we were normally at before. So again, I don't even know what it is if I added to weedtv.com. I'm sure it was much higher than that, but that was just on the YouTube. So thanks a lot for everyone watching, and we will see you guys again next week, and much love to everybody. Cheers.